Joey Marburger, VP of Content Intelligence at ARC, overseeing all our AI products and photo and video. And delighted to be joined by Michael Newman today. We're going to talk about real practical applications of AI. Kind of try to get past the hype a little bit. I mean, there's still so much hype out there. Like, don't get me started on agents. But like to really talk about, what Michael and his team are doing in AI in their kind of real world applications. But briefly, do you want to introduce yourself before we get going?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Michael Newman. I'm the Director of Transformation for Graham Media Group. Really quickly, I just want to say thank you to Joey and Marissa. Thank you for Pitbull kicking this off, and looking forward to chatting to you guys, maybe keeping you out of the post-lunch nap world. So thank you, guys.
All right, so we're gonna start with some softball questions, and we're gonna get deep. So really, just starting off, what really motivated you to start experimenting with generative AI?
Generative AI really came at a good time for broadcast media. I would say news media in general, and maybe it's of its own volition, right? Is like our audience expects more from us as broadcasters. We got really good at doing the breaking news at 4:30 every single day and producing stories that way and making a lot of money doing that. And that's not the case anymore. The audience really doesn't like that breaking news format at 4:30. I don't know how many of you watch that on a regular basis, but that's not something that really resonates with folks. We had the very real conversation about audience earlier this morning where, hey, this is where people are getting their news and information today. And so as a traditional broadcast TV publisher, how do we do that? How do we serve that audience? It comes down to having our reporters doing more work, producing more content, doing it more quickly. That's what it really comes down to. And so GenAI really came along as a solution to that time crunch that really came into our newsrooms. I mean, it probably should have been a decade ago, but I would say it really started to become clear about 3 years ago. And so it was perfect timing for GenAI to come in and say, hey, it's actually really good at taking a good news transcript or script and turning it into a written article. It's good at doing that first draft. And you know who's not good at writing a web article? TV news reporters. So it's really useful to have our values plugged into GenAI and have it turn around that first draft of that news article. I think we leaned into, about that same time, the ARC XP plugin as well. Immediately people were using it more than we actually expected. That's a testament to how useful this stuff is. And every tool we roll out, it's amazing. The adoption, they're using it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we see that in data. I mean, you guys were popping off there at the beginning. I was like, oh, this is great. But that's where we focused too. And we thought, as Joe was mentioning this morning, is like there were a lot of kind of low-hanging fruit pieces of workflow that we could solve in like the right way. Also establish some trust that it wasn't all just ChatGPT or AI slop. But did you get any pushback there of like, oh no, like AI, I'm never using that or anything?
So I always say there are really two different AI users. There are the people who, thank you. There are the people who go into an AI tool, they type their first prompt, and they get a response back, and they're like, oh, that's garbage. AI is not for me. It's not useful. And then there are the people who spend 15 minutes with it and question it, ask it follow-up questions, be more specific, those various things. Those people always tend to find a solution that they can work into their workflows. Personally, I use AI all the time. It builds my confidence. It builds better emails. It allows, it keeps me concise when I'm writing, updates to my team and to my executives. those are the kinds of tools that really I can give to my reporters to build their confidence, to build their to build their workflows, to eliminate, when I was a reporter, one of the big things that always was the most scary thing is when I opened up that Word document and it was just that flashing cursor light, the blank page. That first word was always the most difficult thing for me to write. AI doesn't have that problem, right? It always spews something out to start with. It might not be the right thing, but at least it's that first word, and that really helps me out a lot.
Oh, yeah. No, I think, as we've talked to so many newsrooms, we basically tell that story. It's all really context engineering. It's not just prompting, where if you have really good content, you're aware of what makes good news. We should be the best AI users out there, or journalists, because you know what's bullshit, and you know what's good and what's bad, and you have a lot of information. And AI really needs that input and that help. So with the work you all have been doing, how do you test it or gauge that it's good, other than maybe a surface level, obviously knowing what's maybe bad? I think knowing what's bad is easier than knowing what's good. So do you have any metrics or just anecdotes or anything around that?
This is a really hard question, and it's a really good one. And what is the ROI of this investment we're making in, and it's not a small investment, in AI? I believe that there is results in it. Somebody kind of told me the other day is what's the ROI on email when email was implemented in the early 90s, right? I'm not sure anyone did that ROI analysis, and I'm not sure there would have been a positive ROI on email at the time, but could you imagine doing your job today without email, right? It does derive some value ultimately for your organization. I don't think that's necessarily the most apt opportunity for that, but I think that the best metric we have today is the adoption curve. Who's adopting these tools, and are people using it in a way that is actually generating outcomes, right? Are they producing content with these tools? And the answer is yes. We obviously have the Arc AI. We also provided everyone with an internal tool that we call Spark, where people both have access to all the modern chatbots, the ChatGPTs, the Claude, all of those models, but then they can build apps on top of it. And so we were able to build things like a broadcast script writer tool, where we put our brand pillars into that. And so anyone who a junior reporter we just hired, he's able to put his script into this broadcast tool, and it will give them, oh, you forgot to interview this person that you mentioned in this, perhaps you should reach out to them and do this interview. Or, hey, this isn't from the point of view, this isn't how does this impact our audience? That's a really important piece of our storytelling as well. And then people are able to build apps inside the Spark app as well. So, we were doing analytics, and we did them every month and reported them around to the organization. And right off the bat, this broadcast script tool, we had a web tool that was also really beneficial. And then we were doing it, and we pulled up the top 5 apps, and they were normally the right thing. And then all of a sudden, we found this headline optimizer app, and we're like, oh, where'd that come from? We didn't do that. A producer in our San Antonio station just created it. And he did such a good job at building this application and putting his knowledge of how to produce a really good headline. He was able to put that into this assistant, and then it got picked up organically across all 7 of our TV stations, which was really amazing. And so I forget what the question was, but that was a really
that's it. Oh yeah, finding product market fit in your own organization is a dream, really. But thinking of the ROI, because we're in these early phases. You may not be able to recognize some of that, and yeah, some things can can get expensive, especially around video. So yeah, have you found like other applications like in the sales ecosystem, like the advertising revenue side?
All right, I'm going to go through my whole spiel, and I'm going to start first on the actual news side, and then I'll move into the sales side. But in the news reporting side, I think that breaking down that story workflow piece is really important. And so there's kind of like the story idea / pitch process, and in there we've really been able to create a really cool pitch process where we've been asking our reporters to provide forms for their pitches for some time. AI has actually really sped them up to be able to actually produce those forms because they never did it up until we created the AI piece. When they're actively pitching it in the news meeting, we actually are recording that pitch, and the AI is actually providing recommendations for, oh, this should be on Instagram as well, and this is a recommendation for the Instagram story. Hey, you forgot a web piece to this or a vertical video piece to this. So they're able to do that. Perplexity is a tool that's used quite a bit inside of our newsrooms to do deep research and those kinds of things. Very useful for these kinds of things. Once they get into the reporting side of that, Notebook LM is a super important piece of any deep dive investigation. If there's courtroom papers, those kinds of things. A reporter told me the other day he got assigned to the Villages in Florida, which is its own special island in Florida, if anyone knows anything about the Villages. And he was able to pull up a ton of information, long documents, foundation stuff, and that for the Villages. And in the course that he was able to drive from our TV station to the Villages, he was able to listen to the podcast that was produced by Notebook LM and hit the ground with more knowledge than any other reporter in the Orlando market about the Villages, and ask much more detailed questions to get much better information to the consumers, which is really cool. We use those Spark tools. We use the ARC tools to help with the reporting side as well. Once we get into the verification and that piece, which is actually a really important piece of our newsroom structure right now, AI is used to verify authenticity. It's used to also, it's actually really good at identifying where is a statement of fact that's being said in this article and where's the verification for that. AI is really good at that. And so a human can come in and say, ooh, there's a gap there, and then go and verify that. Or if it's unverifiable, pull it out of the article. It's not so great at identifying what is AI-generated content yet, but hopefully it will get there eventually. But that's another part of our reporting that I think is really important for us as local media people to make sure we're verifying this stuff. On the distribution side, this is where I think we really believe that AI helps a lot. We produce video. We're really lucky that we start with the video, because taking a video and turning it into a text piece or clipping it down into a short is actually way easier with the use of AI. And so we're able to take well-produced videos, well-reported videos, and turn them into multi-platform pieces much quicker with the use of AI. Tools like CapCut and Opus and Whisper and all of these tools do a really good job of doing that and turning a piece multi-platform really quickly. And then feedback. It's a really cool piece of viewer feedback. I see our friends Via4 are here in the room. They have a cool thing where every day they're sending us news tips or news story ideas that came from the comments in our articles on our sites. What a great use of looking at our comments and being able to then guide us to what our customers are looking for. And I love it, because now I'm getting probably 5 emails a day of reporters telling me, oh my gosh, that story, it originated from customer feedback that AI was able to boil down and identify in a big way. On the sales side of our organization, we have had a massive uptake on being able to find information about a market and speed the time that it takes to find a solution for a client and present that to a client. So to go from a client problem, meeting with a client and understanding what that client needs to solve for, plugging that into AI that has all the context of our products, what we sell, of the market vertical that that client is in, and being able to then create a client pitch back, that turnaround time is almost instantaneous now. It's pretty wild. And again, none of this is final product, right? We need the humans to do human things and make it much better. But all of that being integrated into our workflows really allow us to do way more with the resources that we have today, because we're asking them to publish on, hundreds of platforms on a day-by-day basis and sell to hundreds and thousands of different products on a day-by-day basis. How do they do that? How do they keep that in mind? And really, these AI products have really helped with that a lot.
That was a great answer. I mean, there's so much to unpack there.
Sorry.
No, that was fantastic. I mean, kind of digging into that, and we talked about this a little bit, is like, there's so much new stuff, like, and we were making jokes of like, I'm going to check like all the sites and newsletters and stuff before we get on stage, just so I make sure I don't miss something. There's some minor stuff. But how do you maintain that focus and that strategy so it doesn't necessarily become like a sea of capabilities, like chasing the next greatest thing and making sure that it really fits your business?
It's a really good question, because it is. It's like drinking from a fire hose. And as a technologist, it's kind of exciting, right? Is like, I find myself, staying up late nights on Saturday night playing with the latest AI tools, and I find it super invigorating. My poor wife on Sunday mornings doesn't think so, but it's super invigorating. But that's super overwhelming, again, for these people who are looking to do a lot. So how do we reduce it for them? We really work on the workflow idea, right? Is we want to show them in every one of my presentations, I'm showing them a workflow of how they do this or solve this problem. We have and I'm very lucky to have a legal department who works really, really closely with me. And we've got an AI policy that leans on the side of hey, we want to protect our IP, we want to protect our people, but we're not going to have a pre-approval process. So anyone can do it. And then I get the fun job of going to the stations, demonstrating these workflows, and then being open to answering questions or having people bring workflow challenges to me, and either I take it back to the team to try to find the solution, or they actually show me the workflow that works really well, so then I can put that in my presentation and go to the next station and share that idea. So that's the thing for me. As the director of transformation, one thing that I constantly tell people is, hey, this is a challenging time. We're really, there is nothing easy about this. We're all going to go through tough times. It's all going to look existential, like when we look at the bot traffic. It can look existential at times, but focus on the audience, what the audience needs, because they keep telling us that they need this information. And so how do we serve that? And I think a lot of these tools can help serve that and keep us focused on that process. And that does bring a lot of energy to the team. When we give them 15 minutes to play with an AI tool, 9 times out of 10, when they're leaving after that 15 minutes, they're actually excited. And they're going to stay up on a Saturday night working on that and honing their craft using these AI tools. That part's kind of cool to me. I really enjoy that part of my job a lot.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, thinking of like, I don't know if you feel this way. This is kind of a halfway question. I'm trying to almost say AI less, or prompts less, and do almost what you just did there, is like focus on the outcome, the workflow, the problem you're trying to solve, the classic kind of product strategy type approaches. And I think that becomes even more important when you really get into that consumer experience side. Like, I bet you your audience doesn't totally know about that comments feed in from Viafora, but they probably love that, and they don't really even know AI was involved. But the second maybe you put a little label somewhere or say AI, it's like pivot. It's like, oh, well, now I hate it, you know? And it's like, well, but you liked the thing that it did. How have you really like approached that in the, you know, the community of like, how are you going to communicate the use of AI to your audience?
I might turn this around on you a little bit and say, you know, your approach to the vector database thing for us as clients, I think that's the type of thing where it's like, it's not just AI for AI's sake, right? All of a sudden, we get access into a much richer data set to bring up related content. We get access to be able to create a chatbot on our thing, which is, you know, clearly AI, right? But they don't understand that the product on the back end really makes a huge difference in terms of what results on the other side. And so, you know, I flip it around to you a little bit, is when you're talking about all of these publishers in this room, how did you decide that, hey, the vector database is really going to drive the differentiator here, like that core fundamental, and then AI helps with all of that beyond that? Like, that's the part I think. Yeah. So how do you decide on those pieces, the fundamentals, the building blocks that allow us to leverage AI in a way that can be, you know, the Washington Post does a really good job of making sure that it doesn't insert too many non-factual items. It doesn't, you know, one of my developers, his favorite thing is asking these chat bots to develop a React component for him, and most of them do, right? The Washington Post bot doesn't, and that's because of the underlying principles and data that's behind it, and the confidence that I'm sure the Washington Post team has on it. So I think, getting really in the weeds there, but I think the building blocks really play a huge role in that.
Yeah, I mean, with vectors, I remember I first started talking about it, and even my team was like not entirely sure. I'm like, well, here's what a vector is, and to be a little nerdy, it's like my background is in, you know, mathematics, computer science. So vectors is like a critical piece of a lot of things that you may not realize in your day-to-day life, like in Google Maps. It's a fundamental principle of quantum computing. So I was like, if we can leverage that, and vector databases weren't like super new, but if we can communicate that well, then I think people will see the power of it. So it really started with like maybe being too nerdy and talking about like almost the physics-esque pieces behind it. It's kind of like a brain, it's knowledge graph, all that. But then we quickly pivoted to like the outcomes of like, we're gonna start with recommended related content, which is one of kind of the key uses of a vector database. But what I was really thinking about is like the 10th step past that of having memory of all of your content. So real, live, up-to-date, automated content pipeline memory, which is critical for you know, ongoing scale, can power archives, can power agents, improve chatbots. I mean, that's why ChatGPT got so good there. Was it 6 months? I don't even know anymore when this came out, but like when memory came in and it's starting to like feed back in that context window, that's when I'm like, all right, we got to start with the recommended content. You can see the use cases, but then every feature really we're building and continuing to build, vectors is kind of at the center of it. And we're almost starting to talk a little less about vectors now. And again, it's like the outcome, the solution. And like getting now, and I've seen this pivot lately in the past like just a couple months, is these customers that I'd spend an hour describing what a vector database was to them, and now them coming to me and saying like, oh, can we do this now with it? Because you have the vector database, you could do this, do that. I'm like, yes, absolutely. And it's like, I feel like I've almost helped shape that narrative too, where I'm like, don't ask me necessarily for capabilities, because we do that all day. Ask me to like, how does this improve your business? Like, what is the problem? And let's do that, because we're gonna build this. We want you to use it and it'll be beneficial, not just like, oh, here's this cool thing, you know, off to the side.
that's the big change that we've had at Graham Media Group over the last 6 months. Is it was one thing when we were incorporating the tools, and we were adding onto it, and so there's a lot of copy and pasting that happens right now with AI tools, and that's natural with like a fast-moving thing. But the next frontier for us is these tools are built in like spell check, right? They're built in, they're a part of the workflow, they're built into Arc directly when they're doing editing. We're doing this fundamentally where every single one of our videos that's produced has AI that runs against it, is uploaded directly into these tools that build in the vector relationships and those kinds of things. And so that's really the next piece of this is we're looking at each of our technology stacks, and this starts at the fundamental, broadcast news level. The amount of scan converters that I've looked at over the last 2 weeks would make eyes bleed. But these are the things that we need to update because again, in the 1980s, they weren't thinking about how AI could be used to make that baseband video feed much better and much more dynamic for our audiences. And so that for me is kind of the next thing is, okay, our audiences are demanding that personalized feed. How do we do that with the content that we're producing on a day-by-day basis? And it has to be integrated at every level.
Oh yeah, I love you mentioned scan converters as like a niche piece because I and I've been talking with Joe and Matt and everyone about this, and my team is and as Joe mentioned this morning, is we're building really AI for media from that media perspective. It's because those bigger companies don't care about that. That's for everybody. All these use cases, it's like improving the models. Sure, there are new applications. Like when OpenAI came out with Canvas within ChatGPT, that was this writing tool. People were like, "Oh, are they gonna build a CMS?" I'm like, I highly, highly doubt that. They're losing enough money already. So why would they invest in another thing? These are experiments to try and really push the models to see how people are using them. In media, it's they're never gonna get to that level of unique problems you're trying to solve. And that's why I think there's really so much hype around AI is that people know of these things, but they can't necessarily communicate them well. Is that, it goes all the way down where, it's going to solve these niche problems and niche use cases. And if we're not looking out for that, no one's going to solve them. And maybe there'll be an open source thing somewhere, but I highly doubt it. I mean, in video, so I think we got, maybe this will be our last question. Video, at the beginning really of generative AI wasn't even really being talked about as much. The models were not really there, they're very slow. They've gotten much better. How do you think about which things you're gonna tackle really in the video space, knowing that models probably get better, so we may not want to try to compartmentalize too much, and that it's also expensive. Video, period, is expensive. Then with AI, it's just another thing. So how do you almost make big bets in your company?
Whew. We don't have a solution, and I want to be honest. I'm talking about all these ideas. We're still integrating a lot of this into our teams and doing these things. The video side of things, we are actively investing a massive amount into. But again, the idea is that we have video as our primary, that's the product that we build, right? At the end of the day, if we're going to invest in anything, that's what we want our people to watch. We want our audiences to watch. We want our communities to be engaged with, is that video product. And so, if we're going to invest in anything, it's going to be in that video side of things. The real question is, okay, how do we invest in this that's somewhat future-proof? How do we invest in this that actually provides that positive ROI? That's really hard. And so this kind of comes back to that building blocks thing is really what we're doing is we need to find partners who are willing to work with other partners, right? Who are willing to understand, hey, this week, Whisper does the best transcription, but next week it might be, Shout that has the best transcription product, and being able to quickly swap those out, do it at a usage-based rate is really important. Making sure that the video assets live in a format that we own, as opposed to, we still deal with quite a bit of boxes in our stations that hold our video, but we couldn't possibly export that video if we wanted to. Like that, there's a lot of video that still lives in that state in our stations. We're going to get rid of those. Like that's where we're investing. Is I want that video to be accessible, so that way another company could run their AI up against it. So that way, if an audience member was searching for it, they could find that video. Or if a newsroom, oh my gosh, the 1984 World Series, go Tigers. If I need to find that, I can find it quickly without pulling, 5, boxes of tapes and sitting there with an intern and a Betamax, which is what currently happens. That's the kind of stuff that we're investing in right now, because the idea is that our audience will find value in that in such a way that they will engage with it, so that way we can make money and have that positive ROI. We need to get there. We need to get there fast. We think that's the right investment right now, because we don't know what the solution looks like for that audience, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there.
All right. Well, I think we'll wrap up here. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you, Joey.
Yeah.
Really
Cheers.
appreciate it.
Thank you.